There has been a spike in coronavirus cases here in Germany after more than 1,400 people tested positive at a meatpacking plant. That facility has been closed for 2 weeks and thousands of people placed in quarantine in the surrounding area. It remains unclear if regional leaders are going to reimpose a wider lockdown. And concerns are growing about the reproduction rate for the whole of the country, which has now jumped to 2.88.
Coronavirus cases in Germany were long in decline. But now that's changing, in large part due to the superspreader event at the Tönnies meatpacking plant in the country's west. North Rhine-Westphalia State Premier Armin Laschet visited the site on Sunday. In North Rhine-Westphalia, infection numbers have gone down by over 75% since we reopened. But here, in the Gütersloh district, we have a concentrated explosion in the numbers, which are closely linked to the meat industry. It's not the first time that a large corona outbreak has begun at a German meatpacking plant. But the latest incident has intensified the debate over health and safety of the workers. Many of the plant's workers come from Eastern Europe. They live and work in cramped conditions. The source of this can be found at this specific company, but we still cannot rule out a wider lockdown. Laschet has been one of the loudest proponents of a swift end to lockdown measures. Now he faces the prospect of being forced into a humiliating U-turn.
DW's Amir Nassif is with us now from outside the factory at the center of this outbreak. Good day to you, Amir. 7,000 people now in quarantine in the surrounding area. How strict is it, and are people cooperating?
Hi, Brian. The lockdown seems to be pretty strict right now. Now, this factory, we're standing in front of the Tönnies slaughterhouse, where 6,500 workers were at work just a few days ago, slaughtering 20,000 pigs a day. That production has been shut down for 2 weeks. Now 7,000 people, which is all of the workers here, plus their close contacts, are in quarantine. Many of them live in big collective housing units in local towns in the area, several dozen of them. And police have surrounded these areas and are enforcing quarantine. Now, they've learned lessons from previous outbreaks in slaughterhouses in Germany, and they're trying to bring food to them in these collective housing arrangements so that they don't have to leave. And so far, authorities are confident that the lockdown measures are strict enough that the quarantine is being obeyed. But of course, 7,000 people are quite hard to keep in touch with, and that is after this company, Tönnies, has come under the spotlight for failing to provide 30% of the addresses of the workers here, and prompting the crisis management team in the area to say that they've lost all faith in the company. So although the lockdown measures are quite strict, it still remains to be seen if 7,000 people will obey that quarantine strictly. That
is the big question, and it means that authorities are considering a broader lockdown. Could that be avoided, or is that a possibility?
Right. The state premier, Armin Laschet, that's for North Rhine-Westphalia, which is the largest German state, he has not denied that it could be possible that in the area total lockdown comes into place. Right now, it's just the schools and kindergartens that have been closed. But everybody can still move freely in this area. But he said that that might happen if the infection spreads outside the community of workers who live in this area.
I mean, what are people saying where you are? Who are they blaming for the outbreak?
They blame two sources. Tönnies, the meatpacking plant, does not have a good reputation in the area. A person we talked to this morning, a local, said success. It's definitely a success story. They have a lot of jobs here in the area, so people respect that. But on the other hand, they know that the conditions that the workers live in are very poor, and they know the people that we talk to anyway blame those conditions for the outbreak. Now, the company itself hinted that the outbreak came when workers returned home for the holidays, so Bulgaria and Romania, and brought that infection to the plant, but of course the conditions here are responsible for turning those possible infections into an actual outbreak, and I think the locals understand that. At the same time, there is a segregation in these towns here between the German locals and the Romanian and Bulgarian workers, migrant workers, and there have been a lot of false sightings of migrant workers outside of quarantine, which authorities say are just people who look like they're from Romania in the town. So there is the problem that a lot of locals here are worried that if they see somebody who looks like they're not from the area, then they're afraid that that is going to possibly bring the outbreak outside of that community. So they're blaming both sides here.
Amin Asif, thanks so much for that today. Let's bring you up to speed now with some of the other developments in the pandemic. The World Health Organization has recorded the biggest one-day increase in coronavirus cases so far, more than 183,000. The Americas accounting for more than half of that. In Brazil, more than 50,000 people have now officially died from the virus. Hundreds of people joined in protests for and against President Jair Bolsonaro and his handling of the crisis. China has reported 9 new cases in Beijing over the past 24 hours. That's down from 22 the previous day, and the first time it has been in single figures for more than 10 days.